Sunny side up, crispy, basted, over easy, scrambled, omelette-ified. Here are my workmanlike approaches to each of these very basic delights. If you know nothing about how to cook an egg in a pan, I have endeavored to make a video for you, and this is it. First thing you'll need is a pan, and the main reason I keep one non-stick pan around is for eggs. Yes, people had fried eggs prior to the invention of Teflon in 1938, but it's just way harder to do in other kinds of pans. Save that for the 201 class. In a good non-stick pan, you could use no fat at all, but I think most people use some anyway because it makes the egg taste better, and eggs can still stick in here without some grease. I think butter tastes better than oil, plus butter gives you lots of sensory clues about how hot your pan is. If the butter just kind of melts and looks smooth like that, your pan is not hot enough yet, unless you're going for a very soft, pure white egg. If it foams gently, that's a great starting temperature for eggs. If the butter browns, your pan is pretty hot for eggs, which is good for some things and not for others. I think a gentle foaming is a good place to start, and on my stove, that's just south of medium, but every stove is different. In my experience, you can cook eggs straight out of the refrigerator, or you can cook them at room temperature. It really doesn't make much of a difference. First step is to crack it, which takes some practice. If you hit it too hard, well, that happens, obviously. If you don't hit it hard enough, you have to really dig in with your thumbs to break it the rest of the way. And when you do that, you risk sending a shard up inside the egg that breaks the yolk. The yolk is like a water balloon in there. And just because it didn't happen that time doesn't mean it can't happen. I think that same risk is why it's bad to crack on the side of a bowl or some such. You're just sending spiky bits of shell up inside the egg where they could stab the yolk. A bowl also just tends to make lots of little shards that are hard to fish out. Better to crack on a flat surface, and in she goes. You can see that this egg is not terribly fresh, nor is it terribly old. See how there's a little plateau of elevated white circling the yolk? That's the white that was attached to the upward-facing side of the yolk when it was inside the shell, and it's still attached. It's just slumping over the sides like long hair over your head. If this egg was really old, the white would have broken down to the point where you would not see that plateau. The white would be super liquid and sitting really flat, and this is a little liquid. You can see where it's running out in little messy offshoots. A really fresh egg doesn't do that. The white is viscous enough that it holds a really tidy shape in the pan. It doesn't spill out every which way. You can see that the bottom layer of white is very well cooked at this point. It's got a slightly golden edge around it. It's firm enough that I can slide this egg around and it holds together. That inner ring of white is still kind of gooey, not quite set yet, and that yolk is still cold. One of the great things about cooking eggs is you can just touch them to assess them. That yolk is not just raw, it's literally still cold from the refrigerator. If you cook a sunny side up egg like this, you're going to get a white that is so firm you can't really cut it with a fork, and or you're going to get a totally raw yolk on top. Some people like that. I kind of like that, but say you want it a little more evenly cooked through. Butter in, a nice gentle foam, crack in the egg. Oh, by the way, this is when a lot of people would sprinkle on a tiny pinch of salt when that top is still liquid enough to dissolve the grains a little bit. That way you get more even seasoning on top. If you're into that, I usually just salt my eggs at the table. Anyway, to get the egg to cook evenly, now you slap on your lid. Your lid. Okay, so I don't have a lid for this pan, and if I really liked sunny side up eggs, I would buy a lid for this pan, because a tight-fitting lid is much better at this than a piece of foil, but the foil will do. It just traps some steam in there that cooks the top of the egg, and you can tell because after a few minutes, the yolk gets kind of cloudy. If I touch it, it's warm, but still very soft and runny, which is how I almost always want it, but if you want it firmer, just keep cooking it until you can feel that it's firmer. Time to slide that baby out. In most cases, I think it's easier to slide the egg right out of the pan onto the plate. It can be tricky to get a spatula up under there, as you will soon see. So now we've got a somewhat more evenly cooked egg, though the bottom layer is still so heavily cooked that it's a little brown and it's hard to cut with just a fork. I like that, but lots of people don't. If you want an egg that's really soft and creamy and pure white on the bottom, you need really low heat. The butter is hardly foaming at all. That means the pan isn't even hot enough to evaporate the water out of the butter. In the egg goes, and the bottom layer of white is setting, but it's not fluttering around. There's no steam making it bubble and dance around the edges. That's what we want for these purposes, no fluttering. Cover so the top will steam, and this is going to take a while with such low heat. That was about 8 minutes, but the result is a really soft, custardy white that you can easily cut with a fork. The yolk is warm, but still very runny. Very nice. You could go in the exact opposite direction and do a crispy egg. I think oil is better for cover this. The milk solids and butter would likely burn at the temperatures we're going to use. I'm on medium heat now, but as soon as I crack that in, I can see I need to go higher. For a crispy egg, I want to see that skirt of white fluttering in the breeze, lots of steam making the white bubble and dance around. And stand back because steam bubbles are going to explode and this is going to start spitting hot oil at you. There's a reason I've got the camera up on a tripod for this one instead of sitting down on the counter. I love a crispy egg, but they are legit dangerous to make. Don't let any kids around the stove when this is happening. Once the egg's about done, you can turn the heat down and safely inspect close up. I can see the yolk is looking a little cloudy, even though I never covered it. That's just because the heat in the pan was way higher. It reached up to the yolk. If anything, that yolk is overdone to my taste. To assess the bottom, you just lift it up. It's so firm and crispy, it's like a potato chip of egg. Since there's excess oil in the pan, I will lift this out with a spatula so I can leave that grease behind. You know, early in my YouTube career, a dude in the comments scolded me for getting a little golden brown on my eggs. He tried to argue that browning on eggs is objectively bad. It's not something that anyone with good taste would ever want. And I was like, dude, tell that to Asia. That is super tasty. But here's probably my favorite way to do an egg with a nice, bright, solid yolk on top, a basted egg. Put a little more oil in the pan than you would normally use. Yeah, you can do this with butter, but I like to do it with extra virgin olive oil, or one time I did it with chicken fat, which was awesome. Cook the egg as aggressively as you want. As you can see, I've got no fluttering around the edges. I'm going for a soft white bottom. And then instead of covering the pan to steam the top, you just spoon hot oil over the top. It helps if you tilt the pan to make the oil pool up at one side. One time I did this on the internet and a dude in the comments was like, you clearly have no idea what you're doing. You're using a metal utensil on a non-stick surface. Dude, it's not like I'm grinding a knife edge into the pan. It's just the round belly of a spoon. That's not going to hurt anything. Plus, this isn't just any nonstick pan. It's from the sponsor of this video, Misen. Let me thank them for a sec. All nonstick pans lose their coating over time, but Misen's pan has 3 distinct layers of nonstick, all bonded to a durable layer of plasma primer underneath. They say this pan will last 2.5 times longer than a traditional nonstick, and I believe it. Just like all Misen pans, you can immediately tell how heavy and solid this is. I don't understand how they sell you so much metal for so little money, but there it is. The comfy rubber handle slides off so you can use this in the oven. When beginners ask me what pans to buy, I say Misen, even when I'm not being paid to say so, because I've become a true believer. Other pans in this price range feel like they're made out of aluminum foil. As I've said, you can cook eggs in carbon steel, even stainless, with some practice. Misen has tons of options on their site. Go there via my link in the description and use my code Ragusea. You'll get 20% off your first order on this nonstick pan or anything. 20% off with my link and code in the description. Just use my name, Ragusea. Thank you, Misen. So yeah, with the basted egg, you just have a lot more control. You can see what you're doing. You can spoon oil over particular areas of the egg that you want to cook more. The yolk ends up much brighter, not as cloudy as when you steam the top. And as you can see, the oil just rolls right off. But you do have to lift the egg out of the oil, which is surprisingly tricky on a gently cooked soft white egg. I gotta just dive in. Eggs do not respect hesitancy. Same basting technique is going to work at higher temperatures too. I'm on medium heat now, and you can see my white fluttering a bit. Spoon that hotter oil over the top and you get a nice bubbly fried effect all over. If you're into that, really good, both of those basted eggs. But to me, there is one clearly superior way to cook a whole unbroken egg in a pan. It is my favorite way of having eggs, and it is eggs over easy. Gently foaming butter, egg in the pan, and first step is to cook the white until it's pretty solid. It's been in there 2.5 minutes, the bottom is set, and that inner ring of white is just starting to set up. That is my cue that this egg is just solid enough to flip without breaking it. I slide it down to the edge of the pan so it's already up on its side. I don't have to flip it much farther. If you flip it too high, the yolk will break on impact, and there you can see I flipped it a little too low, a little too gently, but no harm done. I'm not going to lie, that takes practice, and I still screw it up all the time, but eggs are cheap and all the mistakes are edible. For a runny yolk, it really only needs like 30 seconds on this side, and you could just slide it directly onto the plate, or you could flip it back around again. Some people think this top side is going to look nicer. At this point, the egg is solid enough to be flipped with a spatula. If I'd used a spatula on the first flip, I would have shredded that egg to ribbons. That, to me, is the best way to have an egg. Though by the time I got my camera in position, the yolk had overcooked a bit. bit. I'd call that over medium, not over easy, which is still good, but with certain egg dishes, you have to get it out of the pan the second that it's done, or maybe even a few seconds before it's done, as in the case of scrambled eggs. Crack a couple eggs in a bowl, and people usually stir in a little salt. One tiny pinch per egg is enough for me. And then it's common to put in a little splash of milk or water. When you beat this up, the extra moisture just loosens everything up and makes it easier for the egg to expand and fluff up with steam in the pan. Either that or the extra water simply gives you more steam, probably both. Scrambled eggs usually come out better with more fat in the pan and with the heat a little bit higher. That's a not-so-gentle foam. Again, I'm looking to create some steam that will give me a fluffy curd. And I like to start scrambled eggs the way you would start an omelet. Stir constantly until it stops being stirrable, until it just sets up on you. The only difference is now you destroy the omelet. Just scrape the egg off the bottom and you get these big fluffy ribbons or sheets of curd. They're still a little runny on the inside, and if I want them to stay a little runny on the inside, I have to get this out, like 10 seconds ago. It's already too late. By the time I move my camera and reset my shot, it's all over. My curds are totally set with a little golden brown on them. Perfect for my wife, but I like them runnier. I assume the reason scrambled eggs are so time sensitive is they're getting intense heat from all sides, unlike a sunny side up egg. That's the same reason the over easy egg is more time sensitive, heat from both sides. Please note, by the way, these are American-style scrambled eggs. French-style scrambled eggs are more like a stirred custard. We'll do those another day. But just to give you frogs a thrill, you can see me try to make a folded omelet. I'm using a 10-inch pan, and in a pan that big, I need 3 eggs minimum for an omelet. With 2 eggs, the omelet is so paper-thin, I always tear it. Same deal as before, a little salt, a little milk, and it helps to really beat this very smooth. Beating it loosens up the protein structure so the eggs will flow much more readily into a solid, thin sheet. One time a dude in the comments castigated me for beating eggs with a fork instead of a whisk. He said the fork is juvenile. How do people like that function in the real world? Okay, lots of butter for an omelet, lots of butter. Even in a nonstick pan, an omelet can still stick on you, and I'm being sure to get butter up along the sides because egg is going to go up in there. I'm doing an American-style diner omelet, so I've got my butter at an aggressive foam. A fancy French omelet, you would cook at a much lower temperature, I think. Stir, 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 wipe down the side, and stir for as long as this mixture will remain liquid. This helps it all cook rapidly and evenly. The second it stops flowing into its own gaps, I'll smush it all down into an even layer. It's just plastic enough that I can do that, though it won't be for long. Real quick, now is when you can put in some fillings. Some fresh herbs are very nice. I'm going to turn the heat off. Those eggs are done. I'll grate on some lovely Spanish cheese Lauren bought. I forget the name, but man, the Spaniards know from cheese. And I want to fold this before the top looks totally set. It should still be a little gooey on top. Sometimes the bottom is solid enough that I can just grab one end, but not today. Sigh. Watch Jacques Pepin if you want to see a professional do this. I do suspect that one reason the traditional trifold shape developed is that it gives you not 1 but 2 chances to get it right. There you go. I'd be very happy to get that at a diner, but the fancy French omelets that I've seen are not golden at all, and they have a much smoother, softer curd. We'll try one of those another day. And again, this would have been perfect if I hadn't had to take 20 seconds to reset my shot. It was a little gooey in the pan, but it's pretty solid on the plate. With eggs that get cooked from all sides, you just got to get them out before they are done to your liking. But hey, worst case scenario is you've got scrambled eggs, and scrambled eggs are awesome. Plus, you won't be juggling a camera while you're doing this. It's going to be way easier for you. Give eggs a shot. They're great.